Everybody, my name is Jordan, and welcome to the shop. Today we're going to be talking about what I consider to be the best deal available currently in the pedal assist or e-bike market. Specifically, this is obviously a gravel rig. This is the Niner RLT E9 RDO, and that's a little bit of a mouthful. A little bit of a backstory. A few years ago, Niner decided to come into the e-bike world, as many others did, and so they outsourced all of the drivetrain componentry to Bosch, which was an incredibly smart decision. So this has the Bosch Gen4, this Performance Speed CX line, I believe is what this one is. And we'll get into that just a little bit later. So first, just a little bit about Niner as a company. Does anybody have any idea what's going on with Niner as a company? I've been a Niner loyal fanboy for a number of years now. In fact, my very first 29-inch mountain bike was a Niner. I'm a Colorado kid, and their connection to Colorado, they were based just about a half an hour away from where I live, was fantastic. And the bikes were always amazing. In fact, my first, the RIP 9 that I had glow-in-the-dark paint, which was very cool. It looked like a raw aluminum finish, but it was actually glow-in-the-dark. Niner's always done kind of cool things like that. In fact, this one, paint-wise, aside from the fact that it doesn't come through in the video, but the paint on this bike is gorgeous. It's this amazing green with a little bit of gold and green metallic flake in it. It's got a very cool topographic design on top of it. From my understanding, Niner, when they do, the first version of any bike, they kind of, this is the 4-star version, by the way, the GRX, they kind of shoot for the moon, and they usually do a pretty good job. This is no exception. Now back to Niner as a company. They got bought out a few years ago, and since then, nobody is going to argue that the customer service has stayed even remotely, or customer engagement, period, has stayed even remotely where they were a number of years ago. Fortunately, I haven't had any issues with this, or I also have the RIP E9, but reaching out to them to get some spare parts and actually just buying the, so Niner has a very cool rack setup that was bespoke to this bike, custom designed around this. I have them. I'll show you what it looks like. Maybe not on, but I'll show you what they look like. They had very cool bags. So on the bag note, right, so this bike you could order, or excuse me, at the time of purchase or at any point, you could order frame bag here, a couple of different sizes. In the rear rack, there's a very cool little small bag that fits integral into that, and then there was a top tube bag here as well. I haven't been able to find the top tube bag. I've never actually seen one of the top tube bags. It could have just been a CGI rendering. If anybody out there has one of these Niner top tube bags, let me know, because I'm incredibly interested in it. Back to the bike itself, or back to Niner as a company. I don't know if they're going to be around. I have no idea. Nobody really does. It's not looking real great. I know the cycling industry is in tremendous turmoil. COVID really screwed up a number of things. And cycling-wise, as a lifelong cyclist, I got to watch the prices go insane, through the roof on some bikes, and now things are kind of cratering. This is no exception. Right now, you can buy this bike brand new. It only comes in one version, which is the 4-star. You can buy this bike brand new on Niner's website for $38.49. That in and of itself would be an amazing deal. Initially released, I believe MSRP was $59.99. It was right around that $6,000 mark, which to me seemed a little bit insane, but they've come down to more reasonable. And at $3,800, that's even a really good deal. If you look around, I found this one was a post-COVID bike that I found somebody had put, I think it had maybe 100 miles on it when I bought it, and I paid right around $3,000 for it. So the deals are out there. Definitely, I would imagine that prices on all of the e-bikes in general, they're going to be coming down, because we saw that was a huge trend, fad, whatever, that a lot of people got on board with, and then the practicality or the reality of riding on the road, sharing with cars and whatnot. It was, a lot of people had a great thought of what it was going to be, and then it just didn't end up working out. Not their fault. Back to the bike. So what do we got here? I'm not going to get into the specs too heavy. GRX Shimano drivetrain, easy, smooth shifting, trouble-free hydraulic disc brakes. The paint, like I said, was amazing. We'll get a little bit better close-up, and I'll link to the description, or excuse me, in the description, I'll throw a link up there to the Niner's website so you can see what these things look like, because the lighting in the shop here sucks. So as you can tell, it's looking a little, you may be able to see kind of a muted green color. Trust me, you get this thing in the sun, it's incredible. What else have we got to cover? Suspension-corrected geometry. What does that mean? All that means is, out of the gate, this bike comes obviously with their Niner RDO fork. But it was designed to accommodate, Fox, I believe, makes a 40mm gravel suspension fork. And generally, if you were to swap forks out on a bike that doesn't have a suspension-corrected design, you'll nose up, right? That gets you floppy wheel, and it completely changes the geometry of the bike. No concerns here. I haven't done it yet, but and I'm not actually sure that I will. But you can swap this out for a 40mm travel fork of your flavor and not worry about screwing up your suspension geometry. Standard axles, front and rear spacing for mountain bikes. It was a 12x148, I believe, or excuse me, 15x110 is the front axle spacing. Not sure what the rear is. You can look that stuff up. Comes standard with 700x42 tires, but is capable, and here's an example. I have another example as well. 700x50, no problem whatsoever. It's pretty close back here, but I've never made any contact. There's no signs of rubbing anywhere, so really not something that we need to that I need to worry about. I'll get into some of the upgrades. Obviously, this one is not far from stock, but modified a few things on that. A couple things made it better. One thing I'm still trying to figure out exactly what to deal with, but you know, as an all-around package, what you get with this bike is the Bosch support, worldwide support. Parts availability, never going to be an issue. You know, pricing also on Bosch parts, not going to be an issue because there's competition out there, right? My wife has a Turbo Creo, which she loves. We'll do a review on that bike as well. But you're pretty much locked into Specialized dealer network, and you really have to rely on them for any of the troubleshooting, any of the components. The battery isn't as easy to swap out. Not that that's probably a huge consideration, but you know, I had originally picked this up with the intent of doing some longer, you know, maybe longer rides, multi-day, a little bit of bike packing, you know, well over 100 miles. And so the availability to swap out batteries, which takes, you know, all of about not even 2 minutes, was tremendously important to me. You may not worry about that. But the other nice thing is, you know, if this battery ever decides to go bad, I can find a Bosch. This happens to be the Bosch PowerTube 500. I can find these all day long on, you know, eBay and even brand new, not a problem. And I can install it, as opposed to, again, my wife's, where something happens with the battery, we have to work with Specialized, you know, get a battery through them, or find one, and then installation's a pain. And this is really a user-friendly setup. I liken it to a Jeep, right? Maybe some people have issues with Jeeps out there, but point I'm making is the parts availability, interchangeability, the customization. You know, the sky is the limit, and it's not going to break your wallet. So, you know, I'll get into exactly what I've changed on this bike, but you know, as a quick and dirty, I highly recommend that you check these things out, because really the build quality is amazing. You got the RDO carbon fiber with lifetime warranty. Again, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with Niner as a company. Hopefully they'll be around. But if not, just knowing that the specific carbon weave that they use on this has passed the ISO mountain bike test. As an aside, I looked into what that means, and it's pretty hard to quantify exactly what that means, you know, versus like a Specialized, or a Canyon is another one out there. It's kind of hard to quantify exactly, you know. It's not like you can hop on and watch crash test videos to see, you know, well, how does this one break, or what happens when this one is subjected to impacts as opposed to, you know, the Specialized. So it could just be a marketing gimmick, but, you know, hook, line, and sinker, as they say. So, yeah, we will get into what I've changed on this bike, and hopefully at the end of this I've convinced you at very least to give one of these a chance. I'm not a paid spokesman, obviously, from Niner. I get nothing from them. They get a lot of money from me over the years, but I'm really happy to just share something that, you know, it's a solid product, and these days when everything is so expensive and designed to only have a very limited lifespan, it's nice to have something like this where any of the components that were to fail, it's not going to break the bank when you have to replace it. So, you know, we'll dive into what I've changed here. Ooh, fancy. That's that top tube design I was telling you about. And as always, Niner's motivational message, reminding you what's truly important when you're on a bike. I was going to tell you I was going to try to get a little bit better idea, and that kind of gives you an idea of the cool green. Again, I apologize, the lighting in the shop here sucks. I'm working on that. But that gives you kind of an idea. Now, I have done, you may be able to see the line here, I had Ride Wrap do their clear wrap on this bike because I wanted to keep everything in pristine condition. So we'll start out up front. What did I change? Number one, the bars. So this is the Redshift top shelf bars, a little bit bigger flare, or a little wider flare. They're wider bars in general, which is kind of nice. One of the biggest advantages is you can order, it's this little urethane attachment that goes on when you're wrapping your bars, and all that does is just give you a really insanely nice wide flat spot to rest your hands. You know, generally I'm up here on the hoods. I rarely ride on the drops, so I'm either up here or I got my hands resting here, you know, and you can really, well, you can get a little lazy with how you put your hands on here, which could actually be a little dangerous, but highly, highly recommend this. Now, like I said, I'm not on the drops very often, but for the times that I am, I went ahead and opted for the nice pads here that they have, really grippy, and kind of, again, it keeps you from getting the pain points there. Went with the Brooks microfiber tape, nice padded tape, which I like, that matches the saddle. So these bars are cool. They are, as you can kind of see, so here's your center line of bars, standard, and then they're like old school BMX style, right? So here's actually the center line of the stem, and that center line of the stem to here, I believe this is a 70mm rise, I'd have to look it up. But that just gets you up a little bit higher. You can see, speaking of, so stem, I went with the Cane Creek, I don't know if it's the EE Silk or E-Silk, there you can kind of see back there. So this actually has the lever for soft or firm, which, you know, I mean, it changes a little bit, doesn't make a tremendous difference. How does this thing operate? Well, if you can see right there, there's a plastic plug with an Allen screw that goes down, and that is what tightens up against this right here. So this is actually the suspension component of this stem. And it's great, you can change these out for different stiffnesses of rubber. I have the, not the firmest one in here. I need to order the firmest one because actually part of the problem is that, as you can see, when you are on the hoods, that is tremendously far forward of the center line of that stem. And so as these work, right, so the suspension action is this, and it works fantastic. Now the downside of this is that you can get a little bit of a slingshot action, and due to the bag that I put on here, I had my phone up here, and when we were riding around in Yellowstone, and it rocketed out of there when I hit a bump. I mean, it shot up out and I ran over my phone. Phone survived barely, but just as of note, you know, that can, unintended consequences there. The downside, what don't I like about this stem? Well, it's real hard to see. I will try to hold the phone still here. Okay, so like I said, right there is this little plastic, it's like a wedge shape plug that as you tighten down, right, that tightens down up against here. Well, unfortunately, on the gravel, or basically just through life, you get a little bit of dust inside there, and this thing squeaks like crazy. I've tried dry graphite. I don't want to put any liquid lube in there, obviously, but dry graphite hasn't made much of a difference yet. Still working on figuring out exactly what it is that I can do to keep the squeak from happening. If anybody's got any tips out there, please drop them in the comments. Other than that, real happy with the anti-vibration componentry, or anti-vibration component of that. It works fantastic. So, let's see, we'll go on to, oh, here, we'll swing around front. This is my super fancy, sorry, I'm leaning up against my tractor because it's wintertime outside here in Colorado. So this is my super fancy Osprey fanny pack. That's right, it's just an Osprey, what is that, the Savu 5. And I attached it here with some real fancy, sorry, my phone keeps going in and out of focus, some real fancy zip ties. I initially wanted this completely removable, so I had this Velcro strap set here, but unfortunately wouldn't hold tight enough to the bars, which would cause the bag to kind of sag around the front. But went with one of these instead of, you know, bespoke cycling bag, because I did want the option of removing it. Got a couple of water bottle holders here, and a giant front pouch. There's a little medium pouch here. Osprey bags all have a lifetime warranty, so if I blow a zipper out or have an issue, they'll take care of that. If they can't fix it, then, you know, they'll replace it. Can't say enough good things about Osprey, and so far that's been fantastic. Now, before I get to the computer, which is an upgrade that I did here, in order to just get a little bit more room, I put this extra, I don't know, dashboard, control bar, whatever you want to call it, just a little carbon fiber deal I got off Amazon. Gives me a spot for the bell, and gives me a spot for my controller. Fire this guy up here real quick. So, while that's firing up, I'll go over here and show you what comes standard. So this is the standard Bosch Purion display, and this is what comes standard on the RIP E9 as well as the RLT, which we're talking about today, and I believe WFO, right? It's real standard, fairly basic. So this will give you Once you punch, there you go. So it'll show you your range, depending on what you're doing. Really, it's pretty basic, although you can have these displays show you a few different things, but the customization is not there like it is with the Nion. So this is the Nion display. And this was about 370 bucks, I believe. I got it on 365 cycles. It comes with the computer here, with the bracket, the cable that unfortunately routes down through here, and as I discovered, actually routes on top of the battery mounting. There's a big aluminum tray in here that's held in with these three, you can't see the other one, it's buried under here. There's 3 Allen bolts that hold the battery mounting tray in there, and you have to take that out. Normally probably wouldn't be a big deal, but they must have assembled these battery trays to carbon interface. Well, things were either hot or they used a ton of lube. I have no idea how they got it in there without scratching anything. It was a royal pain to get out. And that is, and you will, mark my words, you will run into this. If you decide to do the Nion upgrade, these are the problem right here. These little water bottle holder nut zerts that are in the frame, they stick down in the frame probably, well, let's see if you can tell. Not sure if you can tell how far they stick down, but the problem is there's the aluminum bracket that holds this battery has a slot, right? So there's a slot on this side for cables and a slot on this side for cables, and there's a little cutout right here in the middle, and it barely fits. So when I had it out, I took the air grinder to the aluminum and clearanced around these, so putting it back in was a breeze. Other than that, what do you get? So, like I said, customization. So we'll start with first screen here. Obviously you can have, we'll put it in a mode. Okay, so this gives you, so we're in eco mode now. It'll show you your range, and these are all customizable. You can change these screens to have anything. Right now I just have my mile per hour, my cadence, and then I like to call this pathetic meter because as you can see my last ride, I contributed a whopping 28% and the electronic wizardry contributed the rest. So here's your screen. Again, this is just a real basic one that'll show you range and speed as you're going. And again, all these are customizable, including the order that they show up in. So trip distance, trip time, again, more customizable. It's kind of cool. It has your altimeter that you can have, your average speed. I don't want to get too much into the maps there, but there is a map function that will show my house. However, it's very cool. It has like a Hansel and Gretel feature, which will allow you, here, I'll tell you what, we'll just bring it up here with you not being able to see it. Okay, so without giving away the location of my house too much, so as you can see, you can move this around. It's not as responsive as your touchscreen phone. You can use 2 fingers, you know, pinch to zoom, kind of shows you what you're doing. What's cool is that it has a feature where it'll leave breadcrumbs, so I like to just go out and explore, and it'll actually drop little breadcrumbs along the way, and then to get back, you just hit return, and then it'll just navigate you back. It's very cool, point-to-point directions. There again is roughly close to where I live. So highly recommend if you want the customization. The customization of the rider profiles is the biggest one. So all of from Eco to Tour to Sport to Turbo, you can customize all of that through the app that Bosch has and change, you know, how much the bike kicks in, or how much the motor kicks in, and exactly what that does as far as assistance. You can change all of these. I haven't really gone in there to mess with things much, although I am going to change some of the custom profiles around and see. That's not an option when you're on the old Purion display that came on this. Not a huge issue. I really like the simplicity of the Purion for the mountain bike, but you know, when I'm in the saddle for a few hours, it's kind of cool to have a little bit more whiz-bang gadgetry, I guess. You can see the fun custom cap that I got there, some custom stickers, so didn't really change much else. That cockpit-wise, that was the biggest changes. And again, really the only issue that I have is the squeakiness of this little part right here, but we'll get that figured out. We'll get the tire and wheel set up here in a little bit. Obviously, Niner's bag. We'll talk just briefly. So these I went with Crank Brothers. Oh, I believe these were the mallets. So these are the bling bling ones, as you can see, gold for the money. And I did the titanium spindle upgrade as well. I put these on a bike when I cared about how much things weigh, but that was a former life where I no longer care. Left everything stock. I know I still got the protector on there. That'll be coming off. I just haven't got to it yet. Obviously all still stock. GRX drivetrain. No need to change any of that stuff around. You know, their chain guards, frame protectors coming up a little bit. All right, so we'll talk, you know, interface here. I actually, this was a road fix. I just had to tear off the little chunk that was flopping around because it was rubbing on the tire and driving me nuts. It's real hard to see how close it is, but, you know, although close, this side looks worse because the mud is there. You can kind of see it's close, but I have never made contact. And again, Niner specs this and says you can run a 50C tire, which I have no problem. I'll show you a front fork clearance. There is ample clearance on the front fork, no big deal. And again, you got a variety of mounting places and points on the bike that you can add bags, whatever you want. Now, seat post. I did the Cane Creek Thud Buster. This is the smaller travel one. I couldn't even tell you. I think it's 40 or 50 millimeters of travel, and you know, essentially that. Back up here. So as your squish, right? So as you go up and down, and basically it was just there. I had put it on there to absorb some of the vibraty components of all-day rides. Brooks, basic bag. Got a spare tube in there just in case. I did do the tubeless conversion on this. Got a couple of tools in there. I think it looks kind of good. All right, so this is my favorite feature of the bike. It's kind of hard to see. Well, there you go. So this is a Gilles berthed saddle. Check that out. Now, I don't have a problem with Brooks. My wife has a Brooks saddle. However, the build quality on these berthed saddles is phenomenal. So these are completely rebuildable by you. You don't have to worry. Well, here, we'll show you what the Brooks looks like. There you go. This is on the wife's bike. And these Brooks saddles are amazing. But the downside of the Brooks saddle is the rivets, right? So unless you're proficient in re-riveting leather, what you see is what you get. There's really not much that you can do. Now, fortunately, these things last, you know, it should outlast the bike if you take care of it, keep it from getting wet and whatnot. The cool thing, again, about the berthed is completely rebuildable. I think it just looks cool, right? I mean, like the front, it's real hard to see. So each saddle has its serial number, if I could hold still. Each saddle has its serial number on it, specific to this. Just comes on that one little brass ring. You know, it's not ultimately important, but it sure does look cool. So as you can tell, this one has got the cutout, and the only thing I'll warn, so this is great because it really does add a tremendous amount of squish. The only thing that I'll warn about is this little point right here, as you can see, can be a little pinchy, especially if you are not riding with padded shorts. You know, we travel a lot through the bikes in the camper, and when we're riding around places, you know, generally I'm not wearing my bike shorts everywhere, and so just have on regular shorts. This pinches in the taintal region sometimes, and can be kind of shocking, a little bit surprising, but otherwise all the cutout does is just allow for a little bit more flex. Now I know there's the old, oh, the leather saddle takes forever to get broken in. Yeah, they do. They take a while to get broken in. You get the cutout style like this, and it's a little bit less, but honestly, I probably put 300, 400, 500 miles on this saddle. This will be the third bike it's on, before I got it really, really comfortable and broken in. Just for comparison, so this is on my RIP E9. I got the same saddle minus the cutout. I may actually do the cutout leather on this one, but the leather, it's so hard. I mean, I know this one's been softened, but it's so hard to get an idea of leather thickness and exactly how stiff these things are when new. It doesn't really look like, right, it's probably, I believe I could look up the specs, but I think it's only like a millimeter, maybe two. I believe it's a 1 millimeter difference between the leather that Berthed uses versus the leather that Brooks uses. You know, your specific mileage may vary as far as if you decide that you like one over the other. These just happen to work for me, but I love this saddle. I actually bought this saddle. So this is the cool titanium version again. I bought that at the same time that I bought the ultra lightweight pedals. Well, ultra lightweight when you're, giant chunk of aluminum and magnesium. But I had bought this saddle, and then I built my last bike, or built the first bike that I put this on. I built it around this saddle. And it, has paid me back over thousands of miles to date. Couldn't say enough good things about the Berthoud saddle. So as far as other changes, salsa side mount, bottle cage that I had to use a wolf tooth components mount to get it down, and all that does, you can see. So here's where your original mounting bolt is for the water bottle holder, which would normally be up here, but the problem is that meant that my distance from bottom of the holder to the top, if I left it stock, it wasn't enough to get in. I used one of the tall Camelback bottles. It wouldn't fit in there until I put that on there, dropped it in, and now it just fits, snugs up against there perfectly. I haven't put anything here yet because I forgot. No, I actually need to get another bottle holder, but generally, that's one of the cool things about ye old fanny pack is we got a couple of bottle holders, so, you can fluid and snack or whatever you so may choose. But yeah, I need to throw the bolts back in there. So, other upgrade. On to tires. Pirelli. Your guess is as good as mine. Cinturato? I don't know, it's Italian. Cinturato. Gravel M's, these were recommended to me by a friend of mine. And, these tires have, at this point, these have about 500 miles on them. And geez, there's hardly any sign of wear whatsoever. The grip is fantastic. Again, I did the tubeless conversion. Oh, we're going to talk, since we're talking tubeless, you can't talk to, hold still. You can't talk tubeless unless you're talking about valve stems. If I can get my phone to focus. All right, so there we go. So what are these? These, sorry, video cut out. What do I have? So these are the Fillmore tubeless valves. High flow, no clog, right? These things are freaking expensive. However, I'll show you why. So here's your standard Presta valve on the back side, right? And as you can see, there we go. As you can see, that little teeny light line on each side of the center of the Presta, that's where the air actually flows. So not a big deal if all you're doing is putting air in. But since we're running tubeless, we all have to top up our tubeless goo, slime, whatever you use. I happen to use Muck Off. I like the stuff. So far it's worked fairly well. Orange Seal, whatever have you. That is such a small area for that to pass through that they typically end up plugging. This is the Fillmore. Now it's not immune to plugging. It does happen. However, one of the cool things that they have here is that at the bottom of the valve, so when you tighten this down, and this is the only downside of the Fillmore valves, is you have to use their caps. The cap itself screws onto the end, and I'll show you, it actually pulls that tight and seats this. When you put your pump on there or whatever you're using, that pushes that open and essentially opens that up to where you can, they call it, what is it, the clog busting poppet. And it actually does work. I've yet to have one of these things clog up. I did have the Muck Off, as you get inside here, so this is hollow as it goes up in through here, right? There's a little hole here. And this right here, where it is hollow, that can have a propensity to plug. I didn't have that issue with the Orange Seal, but especially either of the Orange Seals, the Endurance or the regular. But with the Muck Off, it does tend to plug those. Not an issue here. I will show you the cap. Okay, so now the only downside is like Fillmore's availability of cool colors, right? So the stems, Now compare that with, let me show you. Right, so there's the wife's. We use the Muck Off stems on hers, and you can get a little blingy with the Muck Off stuff, whereas, on the Fillmore I have a bronze cap, and then I did kind of a cool green, or, cool I guess is relative. Okay, now, right here, get that to focus. Okay, so you can see the threads. I can hold still. So you see the threads. Hold on. There we go. So the threads on the end of the Presta and the threads right here coincide with the inside of the cap. You see the threads in there and how it's got that little tapered seat. So what those threads do, as you tighten that down, it pulls the internal plunger tight down, right? That's that clog busting thing they were talking about. Pulls it tight down against there and prevents leak. But again, you must use their caps. When I ordered these caps, I threw this spare set in the up in the front of the bag. Couldn't be more happy about those. It's been a great upgrade. I will be doing those to the wife's bike, but again, that is in general the upgrades that I've done to ye old Niner. Now, as far as battery removal, let me show you how that goes. Right. We'll do this in real time. So, as I was saying, right there, you can see there's your little nut, or little screw. This thread, this screw, is the exact same thread that you will find on the bottom of cameras and laser levels. It's what would mount to your tripod. Fortunately, it is the same thread, because you cannot buy these from Niner. So, right. You pull up on that, and you can see there's the slots that slot into those two tabs right there. All right, I'm gonna see if I can do this without dropping the batteries. So, what do? Turn the key. Now, you see how that released out to there? You pop that tab, and voila, battery removed. This gives us a look at the inside. All right, so here is what I was talking about. This is that metal or aluminum tray. I left my pointer over on the bench. So this is the aluminum tray, the battery holder that I had to remove. So you can see right here, so those are your water bottle bolts, right? The center bolt, or the center hole right there, is the mounting screw. Now the downside of, and again, you can't see it from here, but on the top side of, let's see, there we go. So on the top side of this right here, this is a thick, solid plate that comes up here on each side. But in order to get this out, you have to get it around those two nut zerts, they're called. So you have to get it around those two nut zerts. It's a real pain in the butt to get that thing out. It was such a pain that when I finally did get it out, I hit it with the air grinder on the backside to clearance around these holes to make it much easier to slot in and out. And that is, you have to remove that aluminum plate in order to feed, as I knock myself silly, in order to feed the cable from your new display. Should you so choose to do the Niner upgrade, that's the cable routing. Runs down through there and then up underneath, up into the motor. You do have to take the motor out, which requires a specialty socket. The threads aren't actually screwed up, they're just filthy, but it does require a specialty socket in order to be able to get this out. It's so I can get you a better look here. It's called a Torx Plus, so it looks like a regular Torx bolt. It is not a regular Torx bolt. It's called a Torx Plus, and you must have the Torx Plus in order to be able to remove. There's, I believe, there's another one down there. It's a pretty simple process. Took me only a couple hours total, and the hardest part of that was the clearancing of that aluminum plate. But yeah, so that's it. The Niner RLT E9 RDO, the best, and I do mean best, deal on the gravel bike market today. And you know, if nothing else, what we can take away from Niner is that. And there you have it. The Niner RLT E9 RDO. The best, yes, I said it, best. I'm not even going to say I think it's the best. It is the best deal available. If you're looking for a pedal assist, gravel or road, this is more gravel oriented obviously, it's the best deal available. At $38.49, brand new from Niner, you are going to get an amazing drivetrain componentry with the GRX Shimano setup, great brakes, hydraulic discs, what's not to love about that? The Bosch Gen4, the newest, most up-to-date version that Bosch has. Complete customization if you swap the Nine display for, you know, $300 and change. It's a worthy upgrade because, again, the Purion is okay, but there's no customization for the rider profiles, for the, you know, Eco, Mountain, all that kind of stuff. You can't change any of that on the Purion. It kind of is what it is. I've left my mountain bike alone because I like the simplicity. Plus, you know, the big old computer flopping around. Oh, the other thing that's cool that forgot to mention about this. Right. It's removable. So it's got a quick release. Now, the other cool thing is that Bosch has a program, or excuse me, Bosch has a feature where you can lock this setup to this computer. So when I remove this, should somebody steal this bike, they're not going to be able to use the battery or the motor because it's all tied to this. Now, I'm sure that there's a litany of potential side effects to that, but you know, it's a little bit of an anti-theft device. Also kind of cool if you just want to keep it out of, you know, because it's real hard to hide this thing, and it looks like a pretty expensive piece of gadgetry, so, you know, popping it off for there, that easy, and again, it just snaps on there. Great, worthwhile upgrade, depending on, you know, if you want to pay attention to what you're doing, but yeah, you know, all things considered, like I said, this is the best deal on the market. I'm sure that there were people out there that are going to disagree, but I struggled. I looked for months and months, and the Turbo Creo is an amazing bike. Canyon makes an amazing, what is it, the Grail on, I don't know, I don't remember the names of all of them. I went and rode a few different ones, and ultimately what I decided on was this, and I did that for a reason. Price, I got a smoking deal on this bike. I didn't buy it brand new, but even brand new, these things are still a smoking deal. Parts availability, Bosch worldwide distributorship, you know, competitive pricing because you can get from a number of different places is going to keep it cheaper as opposed to Specialized where, you know, great support, worldwide dealer network, loves Specialized bikes, but you're locked in the Specialized ecosystem. Whereas, you know, Bosch is, I guess, the Android version of that, you know, where there's a lot of customization that you can do on that. So, yeah, that's all we got to say about this one right now. So, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.